something that he needs to hear the most.
Okay.
Is there something you need to hear the most about what's up on the agenda board?
I unfortunately can't read it, but I don't have any high priority. Just being here to listen and.
All right. Okay. So from what I can understand, we've got Seth from Arkansas who's listening but not at the moment.
Hi, Seth.
We've got Andrew in Williams. We've got Pamela. Pamela
Melcher.
Yeah.
Hi, Pamela.
I don't know if she can. She's currently. Let me do unmute all. I think she's currently muted her end, and she's somewhere up north. Okay.
Hi, I'm just listening. Love you all. Good luck.
Okay. lovely that you could join us here, Pamela. And if the technology we're trying to sort of out for the first time, so it might be a little funky, but so far it seems to be working fine. So what we're doing just now is we've got Andrew, who's a pillar of our effort down in Southern Oregon, who's going to be peeling out in 20 minutes or so. So we're just basically going to find out whether there's anything specifically that we need to get to first before he peels out. Currently on the agenda for today, we've got a report on Chris's visit to California. I'll set that up with a little bit of context before he gets involved. A report on how our sign collection is going. Sort of the need for various work parties that we're going to need to pull together over the course of the next few immediate weeks if we're going to get our sign and our rootstock organized in preparation for the events that are kicking off very quickly, very soon. Concerns not unrelated to that, to volunteers, updates relating to events, and then we've got some financial issues that need to be addressed. So, Andrew, anything out of that specifically you want to touch into?
No, nothing. I feel, I've been communicating with Brad, and we kind of have seemed like it's all moving forward for down here.
No, I know what he did is he gave us an update on the date of the event to the Ashland event to the 17th, I think, at least. He did that today.
Historic Armory.
Okay. All right. So for those of you who are coming in from afar, Seth, I don't know if you can hear us. You seem to be involved, but I think you might have mute on or you're listening, but we haven't heard from you at this point. Basically, sort of one of the things the Agrarian Sharing Network does is we work at sort of two levels. We've got like the family-friendly side, where we go into communities and we provide people with a vast array of our sort of most favored chosen material that we can get in quality and quantity. And that's material we've been targeting over many years. And there are some challenges involved oftentimes, not just in finding the material, but in finding material in quantity and in quality. But that's where our focus is on that level. And then at another level, we focused on the really high-end stuff that's basically passed around by the major sort of plant stewards who tend to work at a very high level, propagating plants, discovering them, passing them hand to hand. And the key person in our network who basically handles that is Chris. He's basically our brainiac. He's got a vast array of understanding relating to a dizzying array of different crop types. And he knows a lot of the key people working in these areas, not just in the Pacific Northwest, but all over the country. So when he basically came to the group and said, I'd like to go down to California to speak to all the muckety mucks down there, we said, sure. One of the things we do is we don't have that much money, but we do have enough to sort of fund these collecting expeditions. So he took off down to California last month and basically moved among all the major sort of interesting folk down there. And he's going to give us a report. I think we've got, what, 20 minutes or so, Chris?
Yeah, I did. Before that, though, there is, I would like to say, Andrew, we should figure out a time when you'd like to come to Nick Botner's or maybe Fred Price's even.
Yeah.
You know, and because there's Brad and Hervé that want to come up. Maybe Chris Hardy's always spotty, but he might be available as well, and maybe some other folks. So it'd be good to coordinate the Southern Oregon contingency with maybe some people from Portland or, Eugene and me and whoever else. And we can do a big push at Nick's. I just wanted to say that because that's something before you leave.
That sounds good.
It's impossible to get to for whatever reason.
You still can't get a hold of him.
Nah.
Get a hold of who?
Fred Mills Price is down in.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
But Nick's we can get into, God willing, quite well enough. All right, Chris.
Okay, so a couple weeks ago, I left on a trip to California, and I treated it like a work trip. It was quite a whirlwind. There was a couple moments where I stopped back where I was, but it was definitely I came back pretty exhausted, and basically we hadn't picked a lot of obviously California starts earlier than us, and so we hadn't picked a lot of what we normally have in our stockpile. But from what Nick has actually done most of the collecting this year, or at least coordinated most of the collecting. So I pulled from Nick's stuff and stuff I personally collected, some of my own plants and seeds, dry seed, like farm seed and wet perennial seed, and brought that down to California. In the course of the events, I went to the first stop was the Golden Gate seed swap in Pleasant, which is basically due east in the Bay. It's due east of San Francisco town, and it was a really interesting swap. It definitely going to other swaps in other areas makes me realize how good we're doing up here. To be honest, to toot our horn, we are doing a really good job.
How do we compare?
Well, I'll explain. And so we are doing a really good job, and by that I mean that in terms of quantity and quality of what we provide, whether it be with the Agrarian Sharing Network events and as Nick said, the mucky muck of rural Oregon, and or whether it be the Home Orchard Society, we're offering a huge spread of stuff, and it's pretty impressive. In fact, I got to connect with a number of the heads of the California Rare Fruit Growers Association, which they kind of do a similar model to ASN in some regards, and one of the ways in which it's similar is that they have a number of events, and they start the events in northern SoCal. I think the first event is in I want to say it's like San Jose or something like that, and then every weekend and sometimes twice a week they keep moving the event north, and as they move the event north, they collect more material from local people, and they just keep moving the bags north. One thing they do differently down there is that they put each individual variety in its own bag, which kind of works as in terms of a grab and go situation. And I think one of the reasons why they are doing that is to prevent desiccation of the scion and cuttings. But they did talk to a guy named John Valenzuela, I think is how you pronounce his name. He's been involved with the Bullocks brothers up on Orcas Island and stuff like that. And really great guy. I'd heard about him for years. It was cool to meet this guy. And his partner, Christine, was also amazing. And he was telling me he actually he liked the bucket method. And I was explaining how and where we got the bucket from. But Arkansas went away again. But anyway, so that was pretty cool. And at the event, in the morning of the day of the event, there you are, you're back.
Hey, Seth.
Hey, Seth. In the morning, I got up a little bit before 6 and started in on a couple hours worth of breaking material out to actually bring it into the propagation so I could offer something to the fair. And so I did that, and I was doing that at Park Ranger. So often I was like, oh God, sometimes that's bad, you know? And he's like, what are you doing? And I was like, uh-oh. And I explained, I explained what I was doing. He was like, oh, wow, that's cool. And then he's like, yeah, we have my partner and I, my husband and I, we both have a ranch up such and such place, you know? And then he was talking about all the citrus and avocados he's growing and whatnot. And I was like, and apples and peaches. And I was like, cool, man. And I was like, here, well, you can have some of these fig cuttings if you want. And he's like, oh, sorry, I'd like to take them, but I can't, you know, I'll tell my partner to go to the seed swap. But anyway, that was kind of funny. So I got to the seed swap and I put out the, basically what we had to offer in bulk that we brought down was apples. And we had some really great apples that Nick had targeted. It's kind of from a mutual list that we've developed of some primo varieties. And so I put those out on the table. And I came back after I went through, my friend Sam from One Green World was there also visiting his partner. So we met up there, and it was kind of funny that we were both there. So we spent time, Sam and I, we went around and grabbed, pieces of anything that we didn't have up here. And, but I came back to see how the apples were doing. And then I heard somebody was saying, what is all these apple pieces? And so I started explaining what we're up to, and all of a sudden there's this big crowd. And so it was cool, and I got to tell a lot of different growers about like, oh yeah, this is a really great apple. Grow this one and trial this one. And one of the issues they have down there is they have low show hours, and increasingly so, you know. And so the number of varieties that I think Heather named, okay, they're there, and the number of varieties that they have to be able to grow that can even fruit is lessening. And another issue is that apples are getting, they find like a lot of varieties, especially early varieties, just become mealy right away. And, or they fall off the tree during heat events. So, I'm hoping that some of what we brought of our best stuff, and we really did bring down a lot of our best stuff, at least in the apple realm. I hope some of that sticks for them. And anyway, so I got to explain the story about Rose Pendragon and then right after I explained how rare it was and how important and historically important it was and delicious, some old lady picks up the whole bundle and says, "Can I have this whole bundle?" And I was like, "No!" And she dropped it. I went like that because I was like, "Hell no! You know, what are you doing? You know, take a piece." And then one of my new friends from down there, he was like, "Yeah, it probably would just rot in your refrigerator." And I was like, "I don't know." But, you know, I was like, this is a really important apple. Why are you taking all of it, you know?
Yeah.
So anyway, that was kind of funny. And then after the event, we went out to there's a couple people. I was meeting up with a farmer friend named Michael Jennings, who is lives in Pleasant Hill there, just a few miles away. And I'm involved with him with projects involving potatoes and onions and corn and different things. And he's a really nice guy and very collaborative. So it was cool to meet him. And then I was supposed to be meeting my friend Chuck Chan, who's a fellow plant breeder who lives in San Francisco proper, but he had to leave early. His ride was so I met him in the evening. But I got to meet this other guy named Brian Lavin, who's fruit explorer and trialing a lot of tropical, subtropical fruit that are grown in cold zone in those regions. In his around his home from Tennessee.
I'll get you to bring the thing in, and we'll switch outfits.
And then anyway, a bunch of us just met up in the parking lot, and that's where I actually exchanged a lot of the stuff out of my bins. And there's like feedback on.
Someone's got their microphone on.
Somebody has their microphone.
I'm just.
Okay, there you go. Okay, so and then so in the evening, after a whole night of receiving cuttings and seeds and stuff, or afternoon, it was becoming evening, and so I drove another 2 hours and got into the Bay Area and visited my friend Chuck Chan, And we just went around and he was taking cuttings on a bunch of different things with a light in his backyard. It was quite funny. And then he took me out to eat, which was really nice of him. And then it was like 1:30 in the morning, and I had to get up pretty early in the morning, or no, it's like 12:30 or something. And I had to get up to visit Stephen Edholm in the morning. So I left with not knowing where I was going to stay or camp or whatever. And so I got up. So I just started driving north, and I got to Mendocino County and Ukiah. And outside of Ukiah, there's Mendocino Lake. And there was a campground, a 24-hour campground. But sure enough, I went there, and it said, like, due to vandalism, damage, etc., this campground is closed so far. I was like, ah. And it was like, at this point, it's like 2:30 in the morning, you know, and I got to get up. So anyway, so I just like camped in the back of my truck. It was raining pretty good. And at 5 in the morning, like these two trucks came up and they were like idling, and I couldn't hear what they were saying. And I was like, crap. So I like grabbed my knife, you know, I didn't know what was going to happen. But anyway, in the morning, they came back just before I was going to leave. And they were speaking Spanish and like totally upbeat. And they had fishing gear on. And I was like, oh, okay, they were just fishing. Because I didn't know who this was or whatever. And they were just idling in their truck for a while, you know? So anyway, and then I went up in the hills of outside of Ukiah and visited Stephen Edholm. Stephen Edholm is a longtime primitive skills teacher, and he's been breeding apples now for, I think, almost 10 years. And he's learned a lot from this guy who I unfortunately didn't get to meet, Mark Albert, who's a longtime plant propagator. He's one of the original permaculturists in the area, though he doesn't like that word anymore. He thinks that word's tainted. And so anyway, I didn't get to meet Mark Albert, but I did get to spend the day and night with Stephen Edholm. And basically, I got to see, and I have some pictures about how he breeds apples. And he grows seedlings and at about 1 foot spacing and lets them grow up into fences, basically, and then evaluates the apples. And as he finds apples that aren't any good, he just breaks the branch. And later on, he comes through and exhumes those apple trees from the ground. And he and several people I met, he's one of them, have been working on recrossing Albert Edder's apples. And so he's just really interested in red flesh apples. And you can find out on his YouTube page called Skill Cult more about that. He's Skill Cult. Yeah, like cultivation of skills. And anyway, Skill Cult, yeah, he's known in the primitive skills community for like his brain tanning book and work on how to, for instance, how to chop lumber, or excuse me, how to chop your firewood for the season, not using saw at all. So totally primitive skill, like, you know, just using an axe, and how to basically chop your wood efficiently, break it down so you can put it in a normal firewood stove. And it's actually called, he has had a challenge for a couple of years called the Cord Whip Challenge, where people like challenge themselves. It's kind of like an informal challenge, you know, to see how if you can chop your firewood with just an axe for the winter, like people used to do. So anyway, we went around and I collected all sorts of little bits of rare apples and a lot of his these apples that he really likes.
We've got about 10 more minutes.
Yeah, and so anyway, so I collected that and gave him a bunch of apple scion, and we did a video, which I guess will be up at some point, of me talking about apple scion and what we're up to. So it should be on his blog, YouTube, at some point. He's been having computer troubles. I've been helping him with it.
Could we have a few moments for questions? Because I know I've got
Yeah.
some to ask you.
And then so after that, we had good dinner and everything, and in the morning, early in the morning again, I had to drive to Santa Rosa, and I visited Rachel Spaeth, who is she's a PhD student studying Pyrus genome, the plum genome, and in particular, like plum proper, you know, plums and apricots are her interest. and she is the curator of the Burbank Gardens in downtown Santa Rosa. So I went there and spent the day with her and gave her a lot of material. She let me cut or take cuttings out of everything from the Burbank Gardens I was interested in. And so I took cuttings on the Burbank Buartnut that's there, which is a butternut heartnut hybrid walnut. And I'll be giving USDA for that. And I cut the Burbank chestnut that's there, and a number of these rare Burbank plums. And there's 2 pawpaws there that best I know have never been propagated outside of Burbank's garden. And so anyway, I took a bunch of cuttings there, and I found persimmon, like Asian persimmons down the street that had seeds in them. So I collected that, and then that evening, I was supposed to visit a friend, but he had trouble at work, and his work went to the house. So I just went south. And I feel like I'm missing something in this, but anyway, I went south to Santa Cruz, and I visited a guy who's doing community orchard work, Andy Moskovich, who's been getting involved with our Agrarian Sharing Network page. He's in he is partner in Santa Cruz proper. And so in the morning we went out. Well, he cooked me dinner, which was awesome. And then in the morning we went out to eat too. I was feeling great. and then we went to go visit this awesome guy named Freddie Menge. When I was down there, everybody kept saying, "Visit Freddie Menge." And so Freddie Menge is a second-generation orchardist outside of Santa Cruz. And he and his wife showed me around their property. They have a huge collection of different types of hardy avocados, white sapote, a lot of white sapote, pears, apples, other fruits. And so it was really cool to see that property. And then he took me to his orchard, his apple orchard, where he'd been breeding apples. And Freddie Menge is also breeding Alberta apples and longhanger apples. And that area is actually where the Howard Pippin was bred. And he told me it's actually called Howard, not Howard Pippin. Howard is a very long story. And so he's been breeding this other long-storing apple, as has Stephen Edholm, called Lady Williams, which is a seedling of Granny Smith and the parent of Pink Lady, or Crips Pink, the popular commercial apple. And Lady Williams just hangs and hangs and hangs. And so he's been interested in really long-hanging apples. So he gave me, we just went through, and he was like, "This one's great. This one was found over, this one's called Stardust, and it was found over somewhere else. And this one I bred from Wixon Crab and Lady Williams and like all this stuff." And he gave me a bunch of new red flesh apples and stuff like that. This is a little out of sequence, and I'm running out of time, but I did also go to visit in the Bay Area in Oakland, Gavin and Jose. I didn't get to meet Joe, but those are the 3 that are the heads of the Planting Justice Nursery in Rolling River. And they're doing a lot of cool social justice, land reclamation work, and empowering urban communities with good jobs and good food. And I gave them a ton of stuff for their nursery, and they gave me a huge pomegranate. They were like, "Cut whatever pomegranate you want from our stock." And so I did. I went through and I cut pomegranate. I ended up cutting like 55 varieties. And I think this year we'll be able to put in, I don't know, about 10 varieties or so into the propagation fair. And one of the things about pomegranates is that they say that on average, an American eats less than 1 pomegranate a year. But pomegranates are a desert fruit, and they come from Central Asia, basically the deserts with the very cold nights, and cold winters. They are totally drought tolerant. They're in the loosestrife family, which we have. Pomegranates are not weedy, but other things in the loosestrife family are very weedy wetland plants, for instance, that are very bad invasive weeds here. So we know that loosestrife is actually a good nitrogen fixer, and it likes disturbed areas. So this is kind of a perfect fruit that we're not growing here. So I hope to work with some of us core collaborators to get to trial cuttings, basically, in a number of different areas. So you can grow them up, people in Washington, people down here. And then I'm just going to offer some of the cuttings into the prop fair so people can grow them at large. They really haven't been significantly trialed here, and I think that there were trialing. That was another highlight of the trip. There's probably other things, but I think we should open up questions.
Do the pomegranates need their own rootstock, or they root and
So being that it's a loosestrife family, the loosestrife family is incredibly easy to propagate. And it's silly. You can take tiny little 1-inch pieces and root them. You can take old wood, like really old wood, and root that. You can like tear a pomegranate apart and like use a bulldozer or a cat or something like that, excavator, and like dump a chunk of it in the ground and it will root, just like figs. So it's silly how easy. I started propagating them last summer, and they're silly easy to propagate. So I also collected some figs and other fruit species and weird seeds and stuff like that. But a lot of what we have is small amounts of really high targeted stuff, like what Nick was talking about. So I basically think that we should take this material and get a copy of it to Temperate Orchard Conservancy so they can conserve the apples. Some of it's going to go to the USDA of the species that they're collecting, and a lot of it should go to a number of us so we can all propagate it, trial it, and see which ones are really interesting. There is a very cool apple that's been the highlight of Stephen Edholm's breeding that he calls Bite Me. And it's kind of red flesh, and it was developed from wicks and crabs. So it's got a lot of flavor. It's a long hanger. It was really good, and I was able to get a decent amount of cyan for that. But anyway, so I'm really excited to distribute a lot of the orchards around here so you can repropagate it and put it into future fairs.
Right.
More questions?
Well, I think it's a brilliant report. Thank you, Chris. And Seth, just a little bit when context, what we find is that our efforts are fundamentally, volunteer driven and grassroots. But the sort of foundational ethic that we bring to this approach is one of sharing. Nature wants to be free, and we basically act as sort of agents in that image. And the vast majority of the industrial, corporate, academic plant breeding complex, for example, is focused on non-organic regimens, and it's focused on patenting varieties and producing things that have economic value for the breeders as well as basically for the people growing it.
The agrarian hoarding network.
Yeah, and what we find, literally the entire genetic structure of entire crop types are all about constraint. And one of the things that sort of Chris's adventure sort of illuminates is the fact that when we take this ethic, among these vast array, the sort of plant diversity, that actually allows us a sort of, you might say, an ecological advantage for-profit community doesn't actually have. So it allows us to be totally avant-garde in terms of our approach. And it's one of the reasons why, even though we're just a grassroots network, the degree of ecological or ecocultural sophistication that we're bringing to this narrative far exceeds that of what you might call the expert state.
I would like to say one other thing. Financially, we pulled $700 out of the bank, and Brad gave me $200 down in Williams. And then I ended up getting I think it was 116 more from 3 different people. And so we ended up still having a good chunk. I think I came back with like 400 or something. And so I still have that money. And I've used some of it we're going to pay for Brendan's rental that we did yesterday. And but a little bit of gas. So that's what's up. I have all the receipts. Yeah.
Okay, all right. Let's move on to a quick sort of sign update.
How you doing in there, Andrew?
Okay.
I'm doing well. I think I'm gonna step out.
All
Will
right.
you be in touch as far as organizing or getting some dates for a gathering, botners?
As we'll yeah.
We'll talk soon.
We don't know what the dates are yet.
Yeah.
Are you gonna be able to get into the Rockers Orchard down in your neck?
You know it. Yeah,
Okay, cool.
I'm planning.
I got a list from previous years. I think of what's in there
Yep.
somewhere. I gotta dig that up.
Or I can just send it to you. Put it back on top.
Yeah, could you?
I'll do it right now.
Cool. Thanks, buddy.
All right. Have a good day, guys. See you soon.
Bye.
Ciao.
One other thing I just want to say about there was one other apple that was really exciting that Freddie mentioned, like we're blown away by, and it's one of these things like he's not totally sure if it's the right apple, but it's been distributed in the area for a long time because it doesn't act like a limber twig, meaning that it's not tip bearing. It's called Myers Royal, but it's won their taste test. It wins. They usually have like 70 curated varieties. Tastings in the fall, and they've had these competitions with the California rare fruit growers, and it runs about every 3 years, and it's always in the top every year. So I have a bundle of that, but I don't think it's actually Myers limber twig, so. But it's still really good, so we should probably distribute it.
Whilst Chris was talking, we had the Sweet Home crew come in. We have Amy and Heather. I don't know if you can see them on the camera right now. Just want to let you know they represent one of our cornerstone community events. To show them around there.
Somebody needs to mute their audio. There's a lot of audio feedback.
There you go.
Thank you, whoever that was.
Yeah, cool. Okay, so super quick update on sign collection. It's been going very well for us this season. Combination of things. We've had access to some collections that we haven't had access to before. The quality of some of the collections that we've been used to have been cleaned up. So we've been able to get to plants, more identified plants more quickly and harvest better. The quality of sign this year is strong. So to some degree, our choices are picking healthy materials is somewhat self-selecting. Chris was mentioning, for example, the fact that he took a bunch of varieties down to California to trade that we targeted. And essentially what happened was that he'd given me the list of his most favored varieties, and I went into Nick Botner's collection and cut them. What I found was that most of those varieties were looking extraordinarily healthy and producing a lot of cyan. Now, when I say self-selecting, one of the reasons varieties stand out for us is because they tend to be healthy, vigorous varieties that do well. So it wasn't too great a surprise, although it was very refreshing to discover that the varieties that he'd asked me to target, we had a lot of really strong, good sign growth on. We're strong on, we went in this week to pick to do our second major collecting grape sign up at Farms just west of Salem. Earlier, we'd been into the OSU collection and cut there. We're really strong in a large quantity of a really strong array of grapes. Pears, we got into the germplasm repository, they're cultivar ours, and went for our favored varieties there in terms of Europeans. As usual, typically what we do is we pick out most of our Asian pear sign from the Home Orchard Society event that takes place in early part of next month. Typically it's a later event, comes in for us later in the season. But this year, the big Home Orchard Society event is earlier in the season. So what that essentially means is that we're going to bring our Asian pear material into the mix earlier than we typically can. And that's largely cut by one man up there, a guy called George Barton, who's essentially the Asian peg in the Pacific Northwest. So as we're looking strong in both European plums are not too big a showing for us, but we made an effort to get out and cut plum early, and we're able to cut a fair selection. And we've been cutting a few choice places in between. So even though it's not a major strength for us, we're looking relatively strong. Now, we just got into a new orchard this last week that has a vast array of really strong plum diversity. But it's too late to cut it this week. We needed to be cutting it a month or so ago. But next year, I fully suspect that we'll be much stronger in plum than we've ever been before if we can get into Dana's orchard. So plums are looking really strong for us over the long term. Apple, we've been cutting a lot of material. We're looking very strong in well-identified crop types. We're also beginning to pick up strength in terms of the choice specialist material. We're probably going to do another cutting or two, I think major cutting or two over the course of the next couple of weeks. And that will really flesh out in terms of our strength. Kiwis, we haven't really had kiwis to offer before, but we got into Dana's this last week and cut 2 varieties in huge quantity, both male and female plants of each. So we're going to have a lot of kiwis. We're going to have a lot of fig material. Oftentimes we find that when we put together propagation fairs, kiwi material is some of the first to go, the first we run out of. But this year we have a lot of that to offer. And then we've got these peculiar exotics, the persimmon, of course, that Chris is talking about. And he'll probably also have
Pomegranate.
I beg your pardon. The pomegranate, for example, easy to propagate like kiwi, easy to propagate like grape, easy to propagate. That'll be coming on. And that's something new for us. And in a sense, it's sort of a reflection of the fact that we're getting better at what we do. The relationships are there. Nature is on our side. And we're getting also more prevalent in terms of the way we cut material. One of the things we found, Seth, through the years is that when we started this years ago, when we first got into sort of doing fruit propagation, we had no idea what we were doing. We went to the old-timers locally and said, could you give us some help? And they were like, no. So we literally had to start completely from scratch. We knew nothing. And what ended up happening is that we ended up being one of the more ecologically sophisticated initiatives of its types, probably anywhere in the world, I fully suspect. But again, what happens is that we build so that, for example, how long have you been involved now, Amy and Heather? Okay, second propagation season. And we went into an orchard up third fair. All right. And we went into an orchard a few weeks ago up Sweet Home Way where they live. And we had a relatively small team, 5 or so of us who went in. Because we've been doing it for a few years, we pick up a degree of ease and fluency that allows us to do very, very well and proficiently through these orchards. So it's basically sort of an example of how it all cumulatively gathers through time. Okay, I think that's it in terms of science. Any questions?
Do we have a list of varieties we got already and quantities or anything?
We're pulling together a list as we proceed. It's incomplete. The first wave of material we collected, we got into storage before we probably catalogued it. We've got a bunch of material with Marjorie down in Cottage Grove that we haven't got to yet. We've got material there. There might even be some material in some of your fridges that we didn't quite catalogue.
Yep, there's some stuff here.
That's actually one of the things I meant to put on the agenda that we haven't put on, which is a very important issue we need to address, which is storage. Currently, we've got cyan in 3 or 4 separate locations, which is producing an issue for us in terms of cataloging things right now, and very soon is going to produce something of a challenge for us in terms of processing this material, as we need to ready it and divvy it up for a lot of propagation.
It's also far, where we have it stored is kind of far away from the central point, and it's far away from Nick and myself. We've been major, sometimes we go late at night with this kind of stuff, but okay. I'm hoping not this year.
All right, well, that seems to be a good segue. Do we have any more news on terms of fridges, I've got a little bit of information. Anything at this point?
No, I have
Okay.
nothing other than the
Okay.
one place would give us a fridge for $100.
Okay.
But they were,
Habitat?
yeah, they would give us a fridge if they have ugly looking fridges,
Okay.
but they don't have any ugly looking fridges. And then St. Vinny, if we had a nonprofit ID, we could use that. If not, then I have to figure out if maybe
Okay.
we can fall under a different nonprofit.
Yeah.
And then maybe get it. That's what I was hoping to do.
Okay. All right. The fridges, that's
Or
an
some of
issue.
that.
I was hoping to hear back this morning from whether Wildcraft cider in town would allow us to store all our stuff there. So there's a possibility that we might have a central location there. We could always go to the Food for Lane County Warehouse or OGC, but for the most part, I don't think that mechanism will work for us. In the past, when we weren't anywhere near as sophisticated, we collect cyan, we just add it to a collection in a fridge, and then we just pull it out the day of the one event we put on, and away we go. But we need to work these collections. So that's still a huge issue for us, something that we need to address over the course of the next week or two, for sure,
Yeah.
for sure, for sure.
My thought on that is maybe we should have a work party on a Sunday here, invite a bunch of us, lay it out and start cataloging it and organizing.
Well, hold on a second.
bags.
That's something we'll obviously need to do. But we're still going to need to work out how we can get all that material together
Yeah,
and
we
whether
could
to
put it in
store
a
it.
room downstairs.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
So fridges are still an issue for us. We need to
Fridges.
find, and it doesn't just need to be fridges, but either somewhere we can put the fridges, or we can put all sign in a central location. We're going to need to have access to get in and out, and so on and so
I
on.
mean, there is the walk-in where I live, but it's too warm. It's
Yeah.
running at like 40.
Yeah, and
It's
it's
just too warm.
and it's too far away, really, for us to get.
Yeah, I'm the only one up there, so it makes sense to. Did Sterling say you could have refrigerators there at the spot?
I haven't. There's not really enough room.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we would need to find a location.
I could. My sense is my sense is I might have enough goodwill for us to use the mission. So my sense is we could put, if we got full fridges, my sense is we'd have a location in the WIC, probably in the mission.
Okay.
Okay. I beg your pardon?
In a pinch, Joe's cooler, well, probably on Joe and I could make it.
Okay.
And I have a cooler at my place, it's just transport.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I don't think our issue is I don't think our issue at this point is fridges. It's more having a fridge
Accessibility.
scene that allows it to be accessible and practical.
Because your spot is about as far from here as the Couch Grove spot.
Right.
Where the
And
couch
that's
grows?
thing, there is still, if it gets desperate.
Yeah.
Other than the transportation.
All right.
Right.
Okay, let's move on to, well, firstly, is there anything you want to add to the agenda today? Anything that
No,
presses?
we just have more stuff to collect.
Okay, all right. Okay, so let's move on to, so again, a little bit of context for the people who haven't navigated this territory before. What we find is that as we moved away from putting on one big central event to this distributed network of fairs, is that one of the ways we complicate the orientation is that we have to divvy up all the material that we gather so that we can be assured that we're going to get enough material to each event. Although as these events unfold, we continue to get material coming in. But essentially what we found is that one of the best ways for us to do that is to have work parties where everybody gets together and has a sweet old time of things, and we determine how much material that we're going to put into each relative prop fair. Some are small, some are big events. And then we also label all the root stock that we put out. So we're going to have a lot of root stock arrivals that we've ordered over the course of the next few weeks. And we need to individually label all those pieces. And then when we move them into the fairs, it's relatively easy, not only for people to make sure that we're giving people the right root stock, but for people to track the material as they pick it up from us. So one of the things we'll probably be doing right now is determining if and as there are days or dates that work for people in terms of a work party for scion and a work party for rootstock. They'll probably need to be right towards the end of the month, certainly in terms of rootstock.
I see that Sunday, March 3rd is before the March 10th event, right? Because that's the first one, is the Home Orchard Society event. So we would organize things on Sunday, March 3rd would be it.
Well, yeah. No, that would probably be a good idea for scion. I'm gonna,
Okay.
Well, let's put down the 3rd. Do you have an opinion on
Yeah, that sounds fine.
for scion?
Yeah, for scion.
Okay, we should have
Or
most.
perhaps even earlier, actually, it might be good to do an event coming up here very shortly, because I'm supposed to be completely overwhelmed by a massive amount of cataloging, organizing, etc. You know, if we could do this in 2 waves.
Cataloging the scion is going to be more than 1 day's worth of.
Yeah,
Well, I mean,
we can get a lot done in a day with the people,
yeah.
but it might be better to do 2 days, just so that it doesn't feel overwhelming for anybody.
And then the other thing is that if we have one day where a bunch of people turn up, and then a second day where a smaller group of people turn up, that would work. And that could work, for example, being a midweek day, you know. And then we've got then it's like our first major event where we're going to need to have rootstock arranged is 2 weeks after that, isn't it? It's the second weekend
Yes.
although we're going to be busy up in Portland the first weekend. So what would work for people in terms of a day? Can you do midweek?
We can do next Monday. It's a holiday, so it's no school. But
We're not going to have the rootstock in for a few weeks.
beyond that,
Okay.
Are you looking in March? Or are you looking in February?
What's the delivery date for the rootstock?
Say that again?
What's the delivery date for the rootstock?
Most of it's going to be coming, I think, scheduled around about 25th.
Then we're going to get the wave from Home Orchard Society.
Yeah, right.
One logistic thing, I think I still have enough sawdust, but we actually, well, it wouldn't hurt actually to go get some sawdust.
Yeah.
Some fresh stuff, because the grass started to come up in the sawdust.
Yeah.
The other second issue is that I have a lot less containers this year. I did inventories. I do have a few that we could put in, but we're going to need big pots. The ones that marijuana growers use, the really big ones, you know.
Or the half gallon drums cut in half?
With one of the things with
We
drainage.
need drainage, and that's been the big issue. We've lost some stuff in previous years with
Because it's too
drainage.
soppy?
It just holds in there. Yeah, we need good, consistent drainage.
Okay, so
In the
so we're talking
past,
about.
Jay Schindler's been donating a ton of sawdust for us. We can maybe try hitting him up.
So the
Yeah,
other
so
issue
that's
is we're
about two.
we might have
Yeah.
a ton of drain. We might have it's like great, but where's the sawdust going to be delivered to?
I can pick it up with my truck. I'm gonna have my transmission back in my truck. I've got the my trailer, and I can put a tarp on the bottom, and I can take it up to the farm and bring it back, or I can leave it in the trailer or something. You know what I mean? But it would be good. It would be good to pick up the. It'd be good to pick up the sawdust at a point where I can deliver the sawdust where it needs to go, maybe the same day.
I really need to speak to the
And-
mission.
What's that?
I really need to speak to the mission about whether we can use them as a staging point.
And then also
That'd be a good thought,
it'd be nice to have it somewhat close to the event, because I'm going to need some sawdust for Home Orchard Society for that rootstock, which actually does link up with us, because we're going to be receiving rootstock. I'll be taking all the rootstock from Home Orchard Society. Whatever we want to purchase, we'll do that. And then, as wearing my Home Orchard Society board member hat, instead of us losing that value, whatever Tanya doesn't want at the Arboretum, whatever we don't want for our organization, I'm going to distribute this out on the various Scion pages and permaculture nursery pages online to get rid of it. So anyway, we need I need it's overlapping work here.
So the way,
but
so
it's
what,
complex, but-
so what that means, Seth, is that we put in a big order for rootstock, and we deliberately get it delivered before our events kick off. Occasionally, in years where the weather gets weird, the nurseries can't dig rootstock early enough. But for the most part, it's been easier in recent years as our springs have got predictably drier and warmer. But typically what we'll do is we'll get all the rootstock that we ordered delivered before the end of the month. Then the second weekend in Portland, there's a huge event that takes place at the Home Orchard Society, which is the big event of the year. And their leftover rootstock is stuff we'll be picking up. So we'll have a second wave of rootstock coming in that we need to label in the third week in March, before our events kick off in earnest the third weekend in March and then run through basically April. So we've got the third, well, let's say that we've got the third as a
Scion
it's
organization.
a Sunday.
Yep.
Okay. What's the Sunday before that?
It's the 24th. So, and you're getting
That's
everything
not,
the
that's,
25th.
nah, it's not gonna, okay. So,
And then the 10th is the Home Orchard Society.
yeah.
And that'll be actually a Saturday,
And
Sunday.
then the 17th is someone's
Okay,
event.
so
Yeah.
at the moment we've got one major. My sense is that my sense is that we probably want to do a science. We probably want to do a science sorting event. Is it the 25th?
24th.
24th is a Sunday, so a science sorting event the 24th, and then the rootstock
On the 3rd.
on the 3rd. Does
There we
that
go.
sound
There's some
okay?
organization.
Okay.
Sounds great.
All right. And then that gives us a little bit of leeway in terms of pulling together the logistics to support all that rootstock in terms of containers.
No, not grow bags, but they're just the big black pots.
Black plastic pots.
Yeah,
You gave us the trees in?
yeah, similar to that.
Do
Like
you want more of those? 'Cause I have a lot of those.
you do, like bigger ones than what I think.
I have a couple.
Yeah, the huge ones are what we're looking for. They're what technically they're called 30-gallon. I think they're called 30-gallon pots, 40-gallon pots, bags.
We just got a whole bunch.
The felt bags.
Yeah.
We've never done that with felt bags before. It would work, yeah.
Until April, if you want to use them, and
There's
as far as the felty ones.
Yeah.
You're welcome to borrow. We acquired a bunch of them from a
Oh.
illegal grow that donated to the school.
Well, that's good.
So we have those felty, but I have a lot of the same size that you gave us for trees.
Right.
I have a lot of those, and then bigger.
Rigid, I think, would probably be better.
Oh, much, yeah.
Okay.
And I would like to say that the marijuana industry, legal and illegal, has been a very big help in supporting various propagation efforts that I've been involved with over the years. From everything from people giving away stuff to the police, like saying, we seized all this stuff from this person and we're going to distribute this to growers, you know?
Okay.
What time of the day was
Maybe.
For what?
Sunday. Yeah. Yeah.
Party would be better earlier.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, basically, what we'll do is that we don't get everybody there at the same time. My sense is it would probably be best to start at 11, and then, for example, some churchgoers, for example, would come in later. So we'd start at maybe, we'll say 11 o'clock both of those days.
Is here.
We
to go to
yet
my
to be
church's
decided.
soccer.
It'll probably be. We don't know yet. Okay.
So the rootstock should probably happen wherever it's going to sit.
Which I suspect will be my place, but that or the mission.
Just space
I
for, I mean, We've got a huge backyard. There's no shelter for working under at our.
Yeah, we need a shelter to look under. We need to also keep the rootstock under shelter. Because it's also going to be it's going to have paper on it. It needs to be somewhere that it can be kept under cover and watered.
Right.
And
with a bit of sunlight. Think of it as like these are tree seedlings, if you will, and the tree wants to be in the beginning, it wants to be in the shade, and it grows up into the sunlight. So we can have I
have an outdoor covered area if we need it.
And so it sounds a little mysterious. If you go to our Agrarian Sharing Network YouTube page, you'll see we've got a whole series of videos on processing cyan and processing rootstock, how we do it as we run into these events. They tend to be some of the sort of the sweetest social gatherings that we have. Okay, I think that's probably that crucial thing addressed. Volunteers.
I was just going to say that I have a Google sheet up, and I'm catching volunteers. So the various processors, what I'll do is distribute Excel spreadsheets with people's contact information, and so then I'll leave it to the various organizers of each event to contact whoever it is that said they want to, say, for example, want to work Springfield, or they want to help out at Springfield, or they want to help out at Cottage Grove. So I'll distribute those soon as they start to come in some sort of Excel format, so you can either email or call them.
Now, I know one of the a potential snaffer is that we currently don't have a web page. We've got a Facebook group, we've got a YouTube channel, but I have a sense that, for example, the volunteer form slips down out of sight.
It's at the top of the.
Okay, it's all right. Okay, right.
Speaking of the website, the renewal for the springpropagationfair.com is coming in a month or less now. Well, shall I just pay it from our funds?
Yeah, let's do it. It's a historical thing, if nothing else. And if need be, we could maybe put something at the top of that page that has the core information, the dates, the volunteer details, the YouTube channel, so on and so forth. I've got control of that, so I can do that.
Yeah, one of our goals is to make these collaborative efforts. So trying to figure out how to catch volunteers, because I think there's people out there that are like, this is awesome, this is really cool work, and how do I get involved? And so people want to get involved. We just got to create avenues for it to say, ooh, yeah, I want to volunteer at the event.
I have an amazing person for you guys.
Okay.
This guy I know in Chico who's absolutely fantastic. He's obsessed with Hugels and Seth Holster and all these people. He's a wonderful avenue for computer genius. He's a computer programmer, and he does amazing spreadsheets and wonderful things. He's a really good guy. I'll shoot you his contact info and talk to him a bit. He's right in your area too.
Do you have a working relationship with the guy? Is he a friend?
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. I've worked for years and years and years with this man before I settled in Arkansas. He's a great guy. Yeah.
Okay. Well, maybe you could sort of check in and do the glad handing, and we'll see what comes of it.
Yeah. I'll try and hook. I'll try and hook him up with you guys. I think you guys are a good fit.
Okay. All right.
Thank you.
All right. Yeah, and we are weak in terms of it's one of our weaker points is our ability to catch. To be like, for example, I run into people on the street who say, "Hey, are you pulling together this propagation fair?" I said, "Well, it's a distributed network now, and find us on Facebook." And that's basically all I have to say to them. And
we're awkward farmers, that's the thing. It's awkward farmers are
Facebook.
It's not that we don't actually have a fair degree of technical sophistication in the mix. It's that we're busy.
Yeah, right.
Okay. All right. Event updates. So we've got Brad coming on board with a third event in Southern Oregon. at the Spiral something. It's a community
Spiral Living Center.
Spiral Living Center. And it's going to be, as usual for him, like he does the Ashland. We have a big event in Williams that Chris and I will be going down to help hand out. And then Brad, who's our point person down in Southern Oregon, really, there was Andrew here today, but Brad's been really holding it together for us for a while. He also basically pulls together probably something akin to what you might be doing, which is a table at an event with some rootstock and some cyan. We do this occasionally where we can. We might be invited to attend a Grange event or a seed swap. And rather than rolling out our full circus, one of us or two of us will go in with 20 or 30 or 40 rootstock and a dozen varieties of cyan and put it out on the table and basically just sit there and graft for people and talk to them and get them involved. So Brad's going to be doing that at the major seed swap in Ashland, as well as the big Williams event. And then he's also just pulled in this other event in Cave Junction, one of these sort of classic permaculture, education, intentional community places. He's going to be doing that. And then I'm going to be doing an event on the 2nd at the Assemblies of God Church in Santa Clara, which has this farm effort that they've been pulling together for some years. Relatively sophisticated. They've been doing a really good job. Pretty huge nursery scene. They've been growing a lot of food and they're making it a cornerstone in a sense of like their food ministry trip. I know the farmer involved, Christina, well, and she's asked for some support, and I said I'd go in and do it. And one of the reasons I want to do it is because there aren't many, the churches for the most part have been really slow to wake to the Earth Epiphany. So anything that we can do to basically get into an organization that's significant as that, and support that deepening into the new intelligence is something I think we should do. So I'll go in there by myself if need be. But if anybody else wants to join me on the 2nd of March, it's I forget. I don't know this is on church on Maxwell. It's the next one. Irving. Yeah, and they've had a big scene there for a few years now. Big farm scene there. Okay.
And Brad says that you could make a meeting, but and I think we mentioned this already, but I'll say it again. The Ashland event, which is kind of a secondary event, is the 17th. And then also fitting with the fridge issue, he says my magic chef fridges dip below freezing sometimes, which means they're losing their magic.
Can we turn it up a little bit?
You have a fridge outside, sometimes it will go out operating temperature and then it won't. That's what I found out. And so anyway.
Fridges are an issue. Old fridges, typically what people get, you start to put their sound in, can be very problematic. So before you start using a fridge, check in. We've got some horror stories to tell. They're more common than you might think. All right.
That kind of moves us into event updates.
Event update. Anything to?
I think everything's shaping up for me at Bethel, and I probably should check in with Kevin.
Good. I signed my life away on their event or their facilities use contract, and there's going to be a walkthrough for whoever wants to do it about a couple of weeks before the event. So if anyone wants to come through and point out, yeah, we're going to need this and this. They got plenty of tables, chairs. We were short on an extension cord last year. I think it was the only issue that really came up.
Yeah.
Wise and
tarp too, right?
I've got a bunch of tarps, so I brought all those in.
Okay.
So yeah, Phil Henderson dashed home and brought in an extension cord for us.
Yeah.
I asked him about it when I was talking to him, and they said, "Yeah, might have an extension cord, but have to put that on our radar to bring in our
Add to our list, supply list.
Yeah. But otherwise, the road looks good. I guess Springfield looks good. I've talked to Cassie. I'll get her more in touch with you. There's Cassie Stoner is their main person in charge of that.
Oh, okay.
So they've got that all set up too. They're gonna have 2 employees helping us out. Donated. I mean, just like
Working. Cool.
Oh, nice. So, oh, I'm sorry.
so. No, I was just wondering about. Do we want to try adding in talks or anything for any of these?
Well, if you're going to handle it all,
Sure.
yeah,
Right.
whatever you want to
Yeah.
do it, yeah. Whatever you want to do to localize and
I like the idea of the good and bad bugs.
Mhm.
That idea.
could you speak up a little bit?
Yes,
Oh,
they can hear.
I like the idea of good and bad bug talk.
Yeah.
So in one of the side rooms or something. I think
Yeah.
that'd be kind of cool.
One of the things we've done in previous events, particularly when we had a big centralized event, is we would have a series of talks running through the course of the day in a separate room or a separate space. And they could be incredibly popular indeed. We would have, for example, mushroom cultivation talks have proved to be immensely successful. And we actually were pretty avant-garde in terms of having a cannabis cultivation session long before that sort of thing was had sort of crossed the to the other side of the taboo threshold in the Pacific Northwest. Very visionary, and you know, got all our I's and dotted and our T's crossed in terms of checking in with the relevant authorities. So it was not just some adolescent impulse. It was a broad social consensus that involved the handle of the institution, the event, and so on.
Okay. Yeah, the other thing that I like to talk about is advertising.
Speak up a little bit so
Oh,
they can hear.
advertising. So last I heard that they're putting together the posters,
Mm-hmm.
and we were still trying to figure out some final things for the posters. And we have a place.
Is
to
Will
print.
Emily putting together the poster for y'all?
No, I think we were gonna just use what we got for us.
Okay,
Are
you
you
want me to
gonna-
put together
are
the
you gonna-
poster?
Well, we got the full event right on a whole calendar poster.
Yeah.
But if there's something specific,
Okay, I can put together a poster for y'all.
Lena
Okay, thank
supposedly
you.
has
So
a
I thought
new
we'd start
icon.
hanging those.
Oh, does she?
I mean, did she give it to you?
No.
I don't know. Supposedly some new icon. I don't know.
And then
And
did
River
you
Road.
want to, at your other ones, do like little snacky type things, have people bring? Because you had mentioned that, and if we put it on the poster, then that would be for all the events. So
Yeah.
He's been calling it Snack Luck.
A snack
snack
luck.
luck. Okay,
Yeah.
so you add that to the poster
Yeah.
too, so, okay, great.
I think it works especially for, I mean, we like potlucks at Sweet Home because they make amazing food there. Beyond snack lucks, they have like,
Freaking pig.
We go there for the food.
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, I can add snack luck to the poster.
Okay.
And
Pig again, right?
And then you had
Okay, there you go. Sweet Home says they'll butcher an animal.
a pig, you know, you got it. You had said something about putting together a website with a list of people in the different areas of volunteers, and then we'd call them to make sure they were there.
So what I do is I have a Google Doc, it's like a Google survey, and I just use that, and then we put that on our Facebook page, but we could also put it on our website too. And it basically links people to a survey to say, hey, are you interested in working what event? What would you like to do at this event if you have an idea of what that is already? And can you please give us your contact information so we can contact you before the
Oh,
event?
great. Okay, so then
And
you'll
so
let us.
it's really like 5 questions.
Okay.
And it really pays to get those links set up so that we can just point people at them consistently.
Okay.
And yeah, it's one way of just capturing some of the volunteers that may be out there that know our Facebook page, but we haven't actually made face-to-face contact. They just heard about us. And so
Okay. All right. Well, we should start. I should
So-
start
So
doing.
do we
yeah.
put like a schedule together that people work 2 hours, or they usually work the whole thing, or how did it usually?
I think work it out with each person, but I usually try to draw up something. And I found if I give people,
set up and
yeah, if I give people actually, I have a little bit of a clear understanding of what I would like, and I tell people that, and then they usually find where they can fit within that schedule. So
But
I
if they
say,
ask, we definitely want people for breakdown and
Okay.
also for setup where
Yeah.
we can.
Okay.
Yeah.
couple hours before the event starts and
Yeah.
an hour and a half after the event.
So
And
2
your
hours
event is
before,
scheduled
hour
for
and a half
11 start?
So yeah.
Okay, good. We don't want to come in any earlier than that.
So they're
Typically, we're going to end at 3.
11 to 2.
So 11
Okay.
start or
Good,
11
yeah.
set up?
We found out that it doesn't really serve us to start too early or end too late.
Okay,
Yeah.
so if we do 11 to 3, then
11 to
everybody,
2, whatever would be good, yeah.
then everybody should be there 2 hours before that are going to set up then.
Yeah.
probably
Yeah.
a little bit more than
Well,
2
2 hours is fine. Well,
At a minimum.
yeah.
At minimum.
At a
I mean,
minimum.
So
at
if we
the
say-
2 hour point, yeah.
It's nice to be in the snack like before people are even coming in.
Oh, okay.
If you know what I'm
Okay,
saying.
yeah.
You know,
It's nice to have the 20 minutes to take a breather before.
the rush.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So what time should we say for volunteers to start for setup then?
Oh, I would say for them like an hour and a half to 2 hours.
Well, 2 hours.
2
But 2 hours
They're
probably,
generally-
yeah.
But
Be
us,
there at
we probably
9.
arrive a little bit early.
So that we're ready to catch them on the way.
Oh, got it. So if we tell people 9 o'clock, that
Yeah.
would be early enough.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we want to get to the point where as they come in, we could
Put them to
put
work.
them to work rather than have them waiting around for us to get organized.
Right.
Because then we've had people get frustrated and leave or whatever, you know.
Okay, that's not bad.
Um,
Okay, so 9 o'clock. So 9 o'clock and then tear down would be like for an hour and a half.
Yeah.
And are we all there? I mean, it's like, how many people do we need? How many?
well, I'll probably be there. You'll probably be there.
I'll be there.
You'll be there. A number of us will be there, but it won't be that.
The more the merrier, but my sense is, I would say
March
probably,
23rd.
what would you say, 10?
March 23rd.
10 people on top of us?
Yeah, that's right.
You say 10 people on top of the football group in terms of all volunteers to sort of come in and help out?
Very good.
That should be fine, yeah.
Okay, 10 would be
Okay,
a good number to aim at.
okay.
Yeah.
10, so we just have them to come, so we're gonna set up and then they'll come at not, let me see.
Well,
what am I
we'll
thinking?
be there with all the stuff
Yeah.
and get
Okay.
stuff organized for them to, like, all right, you
I would-
take that over there.
You know what
Okay,
would be cool
so-
is if maybe you also came and did the Cottage Grove event with us.
Oh, so I just.
So you got a
could
sense
see.
of the unfolding.
Yeah.
That's a really good
Be a good
point because
idea.
people have done that in the past. They're doing new events and it gives them a lot of insight about what's going on.
Yeah.
Yeah. So doing
Okay.
coming Cottage Grove, which is the Saturday, March 16th, would be helpful. And it's actually quite cute to go down there.
Yeah, they got a lot of, they got,
Okay.
are we somewhere else? Where is somewhere else?
No, that was also Ashland, I think.
Yeah.
More event updates. And Brad added one.
And somebody's making a scrape. Is that you down there?
Oh, so
There, Holly.
sorry.
There.
I'm sorry.
You're like
I'm
scraping
sh-
high.
I'm sharpening a knife. I apologize. I thought my microphone only turned on when I was making a loud noise or something.
Yeah. All right.
Busted.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry.
Oh, I would say be there for the setup. So 2 hours early, but I'm not on the Cottage Grove team.
Okay.
I'm just suggesting that would be a cool experience.
I wanted
Do
to
you know
open
what
up space for you
It's
as
11 to
well. If
3.
you'd like to say anything.
Cottage Grove is
I'm
11 to
fine.
3.
I know,
It's
but
11 to
you're
3.
you're
is
like
the
writing a lot.
event.
But I just
So
wanted
if you want
to
to
show
show
space
anytime
for
after.
you to
Thank you, though.
Just making sure I where I'm supposed to be.
Awesome.
All right.
And then when we get that information, we can get together and just.
Are we on to finances?
Sure. I think we're at finances.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's get to that.
So we got just under 3,000 currently, plus whatever you got extra. Looking good. I gave Chris an advance for gas money. Sounds like not all of that got used. Nick's had an advance for
Well,
supplies.
also, more money came in on the round.
Right. So,
Yeah.
Nice.
So we're looking okay financially that way. About half of what we got is probably dedicated to rootstock. So we got 1,000, 1,500 for setting up and supplies and things if it needs to be done. Obviously, expenses should be approved before they're paid out, right? Before you just go and blow a bunch of cash, and I can't really reimburse without receipts. So keep receipts. And I can give you some cash back if you spend it for a specific thing for propagation fair for ASN. Otherwise, we did get a nice $500 semi-anonymous donation.
Yeah.
So that's welcome. And then I guess there was some money coming up from what, Williams?
Yeah, we got another 300 coming in from Williams.
And that's for rootstock for them?
No, it's for the general account.
General account.
Yeah.
Great. So.
And then you picked up a little bit, and then Chris is very frugal when he goes on these grand adventures. So managed to pull off an extraordinary achievement for a ridiculous.
I don't know how I got through the Bay Area gauntlet with like that little money.
Yeah.
It definitely helped Brad giving us $200, and then at the event, I got at the Golden Gate seat swap, I got $96, and then Freddie was going to give me down in Santa Cruz was going to give me more money, but he was like, "Oh, I only have $20," and I was like, "Thanks, man, it's all right." So that worked out pretty good.
Okay, and then we need to work on a protocol for handling cash at the aftermath of each event.
Yeah.
Has that been decided upon yet?
Well, previously, what we have been doing is I do the countdown at the end. I don't have to do that activity, but I'm just saying. Previously, I usually have done most events, do the countdown, get a number on an envelope, and then envelope went to Wubby, so it'd go to you.
Yeah.
But usually we have one person that handles countdown at the end, and all the money goes into the box that from our sales. And then one of the first things that happens at the end of the event would be to collect up the buckets, the donation buckets.
Yeah.
But it's good to leave one of those around because people do still donate at
Just
the
on
end.
their way out, yeah.
But anyway, I do have a couple other finance things to talk about.
Do we have a cash box anymore?
I believe. What were we doing with the cash box?
I have a cash box here at the barn that I think.
For all the events?
I'm sure. I bet we can let it.
I mean,
people
got
What
money,
happened
we
to
could buy one.
What happened to the cash box that we always have used?
Yeah,
Was it Wubby's cash box?
We have a cash box here if we need one. I think I have two.
I have a
here.
cash box.
Okay.
Ours, or it can go around, but I need it back.
But I wasn't so much concerned with the issue tracking as, for example, pulling money out of local events and them not getting any flow back.
Yeah.
So the concern, for example, at Sweet Home last year was that it was difficult to basically track what was going on, and also was there expenses as well?
When everyone got out of the expenses, we created a transfer.
We didn't have to pay for our event, but that was, I think, the year that everyone put in money.
Yeah.
You were supposed to get your money back at the end of your event. And we didn't.
Okay.
Speaking about event.
So that was a couple years ago. Everyone put in like $50.
Okay. Yeah.
And then there was discussion that the event would go around, and then those events that after all the events were hosted, the seed money that everyone at the table invested get returned.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember that.
It just never got returned. Which
Why don't we return it?
Well, we can.
It's been a few years. That's not the point of it.
Well, no,
The
but
point
it is the
if
point.
we do
It's-
something
it's-
like that again, there needs to be better accountability.
Yeah,
If
definitely.
our volunteer list starts saying, "Hey, I want to support this as an investment," and know that after the event you'll get your money back,
Yeah.
that would be good to follow through on.
Is-
So,
Do we know who? Okay, well, I can.
no,
That's
no,
we're
that's not
counting
what
it
we're
as
going
Because
with it. We
I-
just
I
don't
would-
want it to
I
happen.
would like to say that-
Weird to not have any knowledge
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
it
of
should.
what comes
Right,
out.
Should
it
document
felt
it.
very like nobody knew where money was and it was floating around, and I feel like we've got that handled, so we're just gonna move on to that. So it's okay.
So there's the issue of accountability in terms of knowing how much money comes in an event is something that we need to
It would
let
like,
people. Yeah.
we would like to know in Sweet Home,
Yeah.
because at Sweet Home's really not,
yes, we get people and you guys love coming and we make great food. But if our event would do better, say, and Amy Garrett and Alex Stone did it over in Corvallis, so we could make twice as much money, then let's move our event.
I think
If it's not,
I do remember giving you guys a number at the end of the event, and that was something that happened, and maybe it just slipped through the cracks or something. But something that as I've count down, I've made it a point to when accounting for the money, figure out what portion was donation and what portion was rootstock grafting donation, right? Break that down there. And I had a number, and and it matched up with your rootstock sale numbers. But the second thing is that each place I was at, I implored whoever was the point person at that event beforehand and at the event, what were the expenses for this event? Mm-hmm. And then we kind of had a general discussion about you, me, us. We kind of be like, what are you missing, you know? And so Brad was missing buckets, for instance. And so last year we funded the purchase of the buckets, for instance. Cottage Grove, I think we funded some stuff there too, but I wasn't at that event. But I know some stuff got paid for out of that, just as sort of to make the groups more self-sufficient over time. And so I think we should have some sort of paper or something that
definitely,
gets written down, and maybe an envelope inside the box for that particular event about receipts, the kind of receipts that are paper receipts or whatever, as part of the thing. But
all right. Well, I'll make up so as sort of treasurer, de facto treasurer here. I'll make up a sort of an expense report form for different events, and what I'd like to have is one person dedicated, like one of you for your group, one of you for.
I know.
No, just someone to say, I'm going to keep track of what we spent and what we've got in, plus a second person to verify, right, that can say, all right, let's go through this. And then there's two people I can say, one of you has a number for me. Who's got it, right? And so two people in each event have keeping track of the cash. I'll keep track of how much goes out.
Would you communicate that to each event?
I will do that, yeah.
Okay, good.
And then you can keep track of how much. They'll probably send up some seed money to get for people paying $20 for a $5 thing, so that you can give change into the cash box, because you don't need to pay change out of pocket until more comes in. So some seed money from the funds for change into the cash box, and then keep track of what you spent so you can get reimbursed, and then keep track of what came in so we know what's coming in from each site.
Right.
And I've got a spreadsheet started. I'll add state location for each of for that. Cool. I can make it publicly or not like viewable with the link.
Yeah.
I'm gonna make sure I'm the only one that can edit, but I can make it viewable so people can check in and maybe even commentable, so you can make comments.
Does that open us up as a target to malicious, maleficent forces putting it up visibly like that?
I think it should only be visible to people that
I can make it then.
Yeah, let's
until we get.
I'll make it viewable by invitation.
Yeah. Okay, good.
So one thing I did want to just. You were wanting to say something.
I was just going to say something similar to that line of keeping track of expenses, but I think I've mentioned this before, keeping track of what rootstock is sold at each event. I'd love to do a better job at that. Just get a sense of like what we're running out of. So if we run out of something, like let's mark that like ran out of Bud 9 or whatever.
I'll track again and make sure that this time the information gets.
Well, and I found
the treasurer. Would you be willing to handle the rootstock?
Yeah.
Is that okay?
Okay, so I'll get the.
And I found the tallies from last year, and I put them up for you.
I sent you some.
All of them.
Yeah, and some of those were duplicates that I already had.
All of them.
I think all of them. And I put them up. I shared it as a spreadsheet.
However, having that information in August is when we need that information.
Yeah.
But that said, I'd love to have a look at that.
Yeah, I did send it out at the time, but I can.
One thing I did want to say is that we're gonna run. We're in the process of again running into this year around getting a lot of capital in, and especially we don't have a clean way to receive digital money, PayPal, all that sort of crap. And let me just keep on this. I just a little more. We already have. We ran into an issue. You just brought it up about not being 501c3 and not being able to get a refrigerator. That's already one thing that we lost. And then Ashley and Brian Lindsay of Pleasant Valley Cider, they've become quite the collaborators this year. And they would really like to be able to make a financially deductible donation and to our 501c3 if we had a 501c3. And I explained that we don't currently have that. I've been looking at the different options, and I actually have this stuff here. I won't go into it very much other than to say that it seems to me that the most plausible way forward that will be the easiest to administer is a cooperative LLC structure. And I say cooperative LLC structure, cooperative, because we're already a cooperative running by consensus, and it makes sense to codify that. And Shelley, with Shelley's impetus too around the idea of a cooperative structure. And the second is of all of the structures that we've outlined and what we've been about, the nonprofit is the one that fits most cleanly in terms of not confusing the IRS and not having to explain what the hell we're doing. It is an upfront cost of like $800, but it's spread over a 4-year period. So it becomes basically something that we need to account for $200 each year, which seems a lot more plausible at this point. And I do share the concerns about that Nick has about, I guess we could call it like mission creep, that we're not gonna become some kind of crazy behemoth or go out of control. And on the other side, I also share concerns about somebody not becoming the pinata for like the IRS to go after. And I also share the concern about, and obviously you're a well-trusted, wonderful friend, but our structure is endangered in the sense that the money is held with one person. And obviously, I have no concerns about you at all. We're,
but if it gets taken out in a mob hit and we don't have the password,
yeah,
it's all the money.
Yeah, so it's
people he hangs out with.
he's currently handling our non-existent Bitcoin investments. But seriously, like it is by not having any kind of you have to store the money in a way that's not totally safe for yourself, and you're incurring
could we make
tax liabilities.
Could we make this a core focus of our like post-event decompression?
Maybe, but it seems like we need to move forward with this because there was a third person that came to me that was asking about donating to 501c3.
Well, could we come under the aegis of another 501c3 for the next month or two?
That's quite an administrative thing, and
even
also
worse to get out from under it.
Yeah,
once you're in, it's like they've got you.
Yeah, they can actually. I've heard some, and I firsthand have seen, not just heard, but seen some quite abusive situations.
All right, what I'm saying is, could we have this discussion? Could it be a subset discussion, maybe the reason why because we've already had the big financial discussion that took up the better part of a day.
I think that's
in
a
a
good
sense,
idea
we're going
because-
over the same sort of territory again.
I need to bring this up to the group because it's of imperative. I'm not trying to take up a lot of time, but it's of it's imperative
Right.
that we make some sort of action as a group. And I'm suggesting the action
It was
that
agreed upon last time, though, wasn't it?
it was, the structure was not agreed
Not
upon.
quite agreed upon. It was, we
Yeah.
were leaning towards cooperative.
Yeah, a cooperative, and we were leaning towards either an LLC or a 501c3. And I'm suggesting that I'm seeking consensus here today that I would like to move forward with working, because it seems to me, based on my research, that the best way forward is to make a cooperative LLC. And I'm asking the group, do we feel, is there a consensus or not consensus for me to move forward with this, with Shelley or whoever else wants to work on this, as a separate parallel track now, not to take up more meeting time, but simply because it's a core part of finance right now that seems to be blockading things. And we're also going to be coming up with events here pretty soon. And I don't want to really run into another issue.
Are donations to a cooperative tax deductible, like they are to another one?
So it is, yes, and the cooperative structure, the overarching, it's a cooperative that's ran as or it's an LLC that's ran as a cooperative. It's not it's a nonprofit that's run as a cooperative. It has a cooperative organizational structure.
Yeah.
So it imbues all the benefits of a normal 501c3, but it's done instead of a manager-employee type situation, a hierarchical situation. It's a hierarchical situation where it's more flat.
That's generally what the consensus was when we had the big discussion. So I propose letting Chris and Shelley go ahead and exploring going into a cooperative.
I have one experience in this. One thing I'd like to bring to the table is so I've been part of a really kind of sketchy 501c3 forever, and we've been getting along just fine. I don't really take part in it, but we're like a soup. We do a soup kitchen, and people are just terrible at keeping receipts and stuff. I'm amazed that we still have a 501c3. And I would have put it out on the table for you to use, but I don't use it because I don't want to be really any part of it. Now, my friends who are very, very reliable did an LLC the other year with their farm. And they fell into a bunch of shit immediately. So the LLC, one thing I just want to warn you with is, I'm sure you'll be on top of it, you really have to be on your taxes immediately. They view you as a corporation, and by being viewed as a corporation, you're expected to do everything very much on time or whatever. My friends, though they were like this poor little farm, they totally got audited for all this money, and they of course were forgiven and everything was fine. But it was super scary, and it was eye-opening for me, who had been part of this kind of trashy 501c3 for a long time.
Well,
Again, let's the financial conversation can go on forever. So let's have it at another time.
Can I just mention that I worked for a 501c3 for years. I was on the board and I did all the finances. So I can show you how to do it, and I passed all my audits. So I can show you what to do.
She seems.
I also have access to my family accountant too.
Oh, okay. And also
friend.
there is a company. There are lawyers.
Okay, can we have this conversation at another time,
yes,
in another place? That's great. I totally support it. I did also want to say, you mentioned the fact that if you could have an event that will get twice the money, should make the event there. We shut down the centralized event in part because it was very financially successful, but wasn't tending to the fundamentals of what we were about, which is essentially supporting community. So yeah, so I do want to remind you that basically fundamentally what I say more about is fundamentals about friendship over profit. So yeah. Okay.
Because guys, we are not hurting. I want to say that we are not we are fiscally safe.
Mhm.
We've been rolling over successively before this event, and we've not only continued the inertia of the Lincoln County Propagation Fair and the fiscal responsibility and inertia, but we've actually been better. We have we're short up better than we ever have been. We have more supplies at this time of year than we've ever had. We have less want of capital than we've ever needed, and it doesn't look like it's slowing down in terms of even outside of the financial realm. So I think there's no reason, and this kind of gets back to his point earlier about the financial structure. There's no reason to seek some kind of empire building thing, because we're
not
doing
part of the mission.
Yeah, we're doing a really good job, guys. Like, we really are, and we ought to continue with what we're doing, the way we're doing it, without having to worry about, like, oh, we could make an extra $1,000 or whatever, you know.
Oh, okay, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
Do we have enough buckets and close bins?
Do we have enough? Do we have enough buckets? Clothespins.
Yeah.
We're going to need to fix that. I think it's probably
Labels,
time for a major
We need to
glue
order
session.
labels.
Right. I felt like that was
Metal tags.
You made mention of having another round of that order.
Was the
Metal
creep-
tag, right?
Yeah.
it's creeping up to being an issue.
Okay. Would you keep that? Would you
Figure out where to order
those
metal
paper
tags.
manifests?
Do you know? Do you have it?
What?
Do you know where to order the
These aren't
tags?
emails.
Yeah.
Oh,
Send that to me or-
It's
I got mine.
Yeah.
Oh, that's-
You got the money.
So they're wanting, maybe you could coordinate with Oliver about the tags, or about the
Clothespins.
Remember, it was starting to issue.
Okay. Yeah.
Like, we might
Maybe
need
if-
to, like, have a gluing party.
Yeah, I have lots of glue guns here.
And the kids and some down, and some
Uh-huh.
popcorn and some glue. And get the kids have fun.
Definitely. We
Little
can do
kids in
that.
hot
That
glue,
would
what
be
could
a-
go wrong?
that
Don't
would be
put hot glue on your brother.
That would be a great thing to get our young ASN network to party in support of it.
A craft.
Just saying it's something that we
Yes.
need to overlook a few times, you know,
Okay.
it's a little tedious thing.
All right.
Oh,
Well,
that's my list,
I
though.
think that sort of concludes the official business of the day. Anybody else got anything? I just say what a delightful meeting it's been. Thank you, everybody. It's been
I
tremendous.
think we should talk about supplies. I think we should just make sure before we close this thing up about supplies.
Where they are, because it sounds like some of the things like a cash box, and I don't
Yeah.
know where the clothespins are.
I think they're all at Wubbies. And
Wubby.
I went and looked, and I think that stuff is all there. in
The
boxes.
clothespins included.
You know, I don't remember seeing
Okay.
it, but
The clothespins are getting their
Yeah, some of them, right? Did
You
they provide stuff?
might have it a little bit, but I would implore us that it might be a good idea. I'm feeling like it's a good idea that we
go through those
Make it-
boxes.
go through the boxes, one, but two, make another batch of those clothespins, like several hundred, you know?
Maybe
So we
I can
have
get
fresh
tagged
ones.
on to, if you get a lot of turnout at either of the tag that one to
Yeah.
another thing.
I mean, I'm thinking there's going to be work parties where we invite people.
Yeah. I mean, we want to. I mean,
Just bringing in-
mostly we've got huge numbers of clothespins. It's just that a bunch of them just need to be repaired. That's all.
Yeah.
But it's not, I mean, we do, and a huge number need to be repaired, and they're not really that expensive to make.
They're not.
And they are a depreciating asset in the sense they are falling apart. And I've noticed last year they were falling apart with quite a
Well, that's
veracity.
because the Sweet Home Crew are really rough with the way they sort of treat things,
We're aggressive.
people, and everything like that.
Cool.
Other supplies, we have markers, we have plenty of blue tape.
Where's Tarts light bulbs?
Colored markers and poster paper, stuff like that.
We got a lot of posters that are prefabricated now,
Yeah, all
that are
signage is
laminated.
Oh, and there's the issue about laminating our labels.
Laminating our label. Oh,
There
yeah.
was the
Me and
talk
Webby
of
have
that.
talked
I
about
thought
that
that
a
was a
lot.
good idea, yeah.
Webby and I. Webby and I have talked about that quite a bit.
Also,
Can you tell us a teacher or two in the room?
Also known as
Sitting and laminating hundreds and hundreds of labels that so they last for indefinitely. And then last year, what we did was we organized them alphabetically, and then we put them back alphabetically at the end of the event. And so it was super easy to go and just like stick tags up.
Yeah. That would mean really being on top of our descriptions of each variety.
New varieties.
New varieties, because the old ones, we got all descriptions all together.
Well, that certainly need to be looked over.
We need to consolidate
files from the
and
last
analyze some of the descriptions.
Some of them were just picked up, and then others are born from experience, and there's certainly some information that we can add.
That's a whole other party.
Yeah, that's a late night party that continues for weeks at a time, I find that. All right. Okay, I think
awesome.
I think we sort of have come to the conclusion of today. Lovely that you were able to join us. We're honored. You now give us a national dimension.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So let's stay in touch. Maybe you have some feedback for us. And I'm sorry we didn't get too much of an opportunity to have you speak about what's going on your end, but let's continue the conversation later.
Yeah, great.
Okay,
you guys are wonderful. Thanks for doing what you do.
Yeah, cool. Delighted to hear that you're doing what you're doing, and I hope you got. I mean, I'm sure you saw that we've got our act relatively together. But like yourself, we started with nothing when we got this thing going originally. We knew nothing and started with nothing. So.
Next
Good job, guys. Good job.
Next meeting is going to be Aaron Parker and Jesse Stevens from Maine. You're part of the Maine Tree Crop Alliance, which is part of the MOFGA, the Maine Organic Farmers and Growers Association. And they're wanting to I believe they're wanting to split off from MOFGA and really build the Maine Tree Crop Alliance back up into a big thing. And they would like to they've been both been collaborating with me for years, and they're both wonderful guys. And anyway, so I forgot to make mention, or I did mention, I guess they couldn't join today, but they would like to join up and join in and hear what's going on and share what they're doing too. So, and thanks for showing up, Pamela.
Hey.
Thank you. This is very inspiring. Best of luck to you all.
All right, Pamela. Yeah.
Glory land of Portland.
Thanks for always being a supporter, Pamela.
Oh, you're so welcome.
Always lovely to feel your presence and voice online too. Thank you so much for everything you do today.
You're welcome.
All right, goodbye, folks.
Bye.
Right.
Do we want to spend the next date now or? Okay.